before I drop kick it. It says it's live. Cool.
It says it's live on my end.
Now streaming on YouTube. Very awesome. Oh, well, it's now 2 o'clock, so I'll just do a little brief introduction as folks are maybe tuning into YouTube and giving them a little bit of a chance to get in here. So hi, everybody in the internet. My name is Jenny with the Center for Aquatic Sciences, and you guys are tuning into our first ever guest expert talk with Judith here, who you might be able to see right beside my screen or my face. Now, this is part of our World Oceans Week virtual festival. It's Monday. It's actually World Oceans Day today, and we're super excited to have Judith here because she has a really awesome talk to present to us all. Now, she is a geography teacher, as well as a National Geographic explorer, and she was a 2018 Grosvenor Teacher Fellow. I always have trouble with that word, Grosvenor.
Drop the S.
Grosvenor
That's
Teacher
it.
Fellow. There you go. And with all of that, with your National Geographic connection, I believe you went in 2018 on a very fantastic trip to Antarctica with Nat Geo and Lindblad Expeditions. So I invited her here today to talk with all of us and tell us how that trip was, going down to Antarctica and being on the ocean. So with that, I'm going to make sure I can see our YouTube and just make sure it's going as planned. Cool. It is there, and whenever you are ready.
Okay. And like Jenny and I were talking about right before this, if you have a question, just unmute yourself and ask right there, because if it's about that specific picture, it would be easier to deal with it at that point. Okay. All right, so you should be able to see the first screen. Jenny, I'm assuming yes? Oh, okay, I didn't have you on the thing, so that's why I was pulling it up.
I unmuted myself, but yes, okay. I can see it.
All right, so basically I was able to go to Antarctica on an expedition with National Geographic and Lindblad Expeditions in 2018, so it's been about a year and a half. I still have to pinch myself because I don't always believe that it still happened. But I pulled the picture in the background, and I want to get your attention to the bottom of the picture and look at the color of the water. That was the color of the water in Antarctica. So if you've been near water in your area and you stir it up or move it around, there's a lot of sediment that ends up in it. And even behind the ship, the National Geographic Explorer, you could look down and see this blue, beautiful water as we were going through. So I just kind of want you to think about that as you're moving through these pictures with me and these images. So a Grosvenor Teacher Fellow is sent on a expedition to a pristine place somewhere in the world. So some of my friends went to Alaska, some to Iceland, some to Greenland, some to northern Canada, some to Norway and Svalbard, which is that little teeny island just to the north of Norway. Some were sent to the Galapagos, and one group went to the South Georgia Island. And then my group, we went to Argentina, and from there across the Drake Passage and to Antarctica. And I chose this picture to explain what a Grosvenor Teacher Fellow is. It's basically a teacher sent on these expeditions to these pristine places to bring back, pushed the wrong button, to bring back their excitement and what they've learned to their students. And since I was a little kid, have loved penguins. If you walk around my house, there's penguins everywhere. My classroom, penguins everywhere. And this was the first penguin on land, not bouncing around the water that you really couldn't see, that I saw. And I seriously sat down just off the trail there and just sat there and watched this penguin for about 20 minutes with my buddy who was walking with me. And I laughed, I cried, and brought back that emotional experience so that I could transfer it to my students and now to you all. So how did I get there? I live just outside around Roanoke, Virginia. And so I flew from Roanoke to Atlanta, because Red Oaks Airport is nowhere big enough to get you anywhere. So I flew to Atlanta, and then from there took an overnight flight to Buenos Aires. From there, we spent about 2 days in Buenos Aires before getting on another plane and going to Ushuaia, which is the southernmost city in the world. In Ushuaia, that's where we found the National Geographic Explorer, the ship we were to get on, which you see in the bottom picture. All that traveling was 17 hours of plane time. That didn't include the waiting in the airport, the 2 days hanging out in Buenos Aires, and so on. So 17 hours is the total travel time so far. So then you have to cross the Drake Passage, which took us 2.5 days. It's 640 miles. And then finally, you're on the islands off the coast of the peninsula of Antarctica. So imagine 17 hours of flying time plus 2.5 days on a ship. Now, if you look at the waves on that ship, they don't call the Drake Passage sort of this mean, evil, scary thing for any reason in particular, except for the fact that you will get sick. It is very rough. The ocean here, let me go back to this map. If you look at the southern part of South America and imagine that the peninsula of Antarctica is coming up right about where the map ends, it's a very narrow area, and the water goes from east to west and circles around Antarctica right there. So imagine that you're stirring a bowl of water and all this water is trying to push through, and then you've got storms that are like big, huge hurricanes, if not bigger. You've got these huge waves that occur that often are referred to as rogue waves. So you've got large waves, and they're all trying to shove through in this one little teeny area. So think about that with Oceans Week, and consider the fact that hold on a second, because now my 10-year-old, yes. Sorry, we are in the midst of collecting plastic for Everyday Plastic Challenge right now, and so he's checking on plastic, so sorry. But down in the southern part, all that water has to squish together. And if you look at Antarctica compared to Africa, compared to Australia, it's not as much of a tunnel. And so imagine you now have to take a ship through this little teeny tunnel here, and the waves are talking at you and talking at you. So our waves, they said, were rough. They warned us the day before that it was going to be rough. We were dealing with 15 to 20-foot waves, swells. I got out of bed for a total of 1 hour that day. I know you guys, some of you all are more in flat areas than I am, but if you've ever been on a back mountain country road, imagine being on that road with the stomach bug, and you have no seatbelt, and they're going as fast as they can. And that's the closest I can get to how I felt with going through this passage. So, but once I got there, I was like, I am never coming through there again until I saw these guys. And if you look underneath this penguin, you'll see the baby chick. And this was right around the corner from where I was sitting. If I had just wandered another 50 yards, this is what I would have seen, which then I got to and saw. Most penguins build their nests on rocky outcrops, and then they put more pebbles and rocks to build up their nest. So the nest is made up of rocks, dirt, and then the white stuff is the penguin guano. So the interesting thing about it is penguins will try to steal rocks from each other's nest. And there was a study done somewhere around McMurdo Base in Antarctica where they painted one of the nests, all the rocks, gold or a color like that. And they went back about a month later and the rocks were all over the colony. So penguins definitely like to take each other's rocks from their nest to build their nest with. So it's an interesting cycle that you see. And sorry, yeah.
What species of penguin is that?
I was just getting ready to that. I just realized I'd forgotten it. This is a chin strap, and this picture isn't the best. If you look at the edges of the black on the head, you'll see a very narrow strap coming down that looks like it's going under the beak. And it's a chin strap, and the name they're pretty sure is coming because the first explorers that saw them were used to the helmeted military that had the chin straps underneath their helmets. And so that's where they're pretty sure the name comes from. The chin strap is not actually native to Antarctica. The chin strap comes for about 3 to 4 months. And then during the wintertime goes farther north. So they're actually not one of the native penguins to Antarctica.
Also, there was
Yeah.
one more thing. Isn't there also a study that some penguins give rocks as a courting gift?
There is some beginning to think that that is what's going on too. Yes. I have not read as much on those studies, but yes, I have heard that one too. So I keep learning as I go. Any other questions before I move on?
Nope, looks good.
Okay, all right. So this colony is farther south into the Weddell Sea. And so if you look at the peninsula of Antarctica, the Weddell Sea is most of the time the way they have Antarctica positioned. The Weddell Sea is on the right-hand side of the peninsula if the peninsula is facing north towards Antarctica, or towards Argentina, sorry, wrong A. But this particular colony, if you look, they are Adelaide penguins. They are native to Antarctica. What makes a penguin native to Antarctica is that most of their year is spent in Antarctica. The emperor penguins are your other ones. And then the, oh my goodness, my brain just went. I can see the penguin. I'll get it in a minute for you out of my brain. But there is a third species that stays in Antarctica longer. But if you look, you'll see, especially in the foreground, lots of Adelie penguins. They're sitting most of them are on nests. Imagine that each nest has 1 to 2 bundles of little gray balls, and those are the baby chicks. But then look in the background and you'll see this white stuff all the way down the edge. This is a colony of 10,000 pairs of penguins, which really means 20,000 plus all their babies. Sorry, I thought I had a close-up of the babies, and that's what I was checking for. I didn't. But do you see the icebergs off the coast in the water? The icebergs give the penguins an area to hang out on when they're tired of swimming, because the Adelie penguin will actually trade off for a week at a time. So the father will leave for a week, go swimming, get food, come back in about a week, and then the mother will go, and they'll just keep trading. So they've got to store up enough food in order to feed the chicks as the chicks keep growing. So that's part of the process too. My students ask me, well, what happens if one of the penguins doesn't come back? And so there's several things. One, the other penguin is going to have to leave to go eat. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So that penguin will often leave the chicks, and they'll have to be unprotected. At that point, you have a couple of things. Skuas are very large brown birds that actually eat penguin chicks. They'll eat lots of other things, but if penguin chicks are available, they'll grab them. And so it could be a skua comes along. And there's some of the scientists that I've talked to that actually have watched skuas wait and they'll just patiently wait until a penguin gets up and leaves their nest. The next thing that could happen is a penguin who has already lost their chicks can come over and take the penguins out of another penguin's nest and move them to their nest. So that's a couple of the options that could happen. If all goes well, maybe the other penguin comes back and they're still in the nest. So a little bit rarer though. This is the third penguin, and my brain, there it is. It's the Gentoo penguin. I knew it would come. The third penguin is the Gentoo penguin, and that is the typical penguin you usually see if somebody draws a picture of a penguin. They do a combination often between the Gentoo and the Adelie penguin. So it's not necessarily the species you would normally see. So on the right-hand side is what's called a penguin highway. In this, there were penguin highways everywhere, but you can't see them unless you were sitting there really watching where the penguins were walking. Here, the penguins have had to beat down the snow as it keeps falling so that they can get to their nest, which was up on the top on a rock outcrop, and down to the water. If you look at this penguin highway, it's about 1 penguin wide. So when the penguins are coming out of the water and going up, and you've got penguins coming down from the nest to go to the water, you sometimes run into a traffic jam. You get a lot of squawking. Sometimes whoever decides they're done with it, or however they've decided it, will jump out of the tunnel area and stand on the top and let the others go by. The interesting thing is sometimes at the bottom of these penguin highways where it comes out of the water, you'll see like 10 to 15 penguins just sort of flopped. And they could be resting after a long swim and then going to take the hike up. They could be looking at the hike and waiting. It could be crowded. There's all kinds of reasons why they might be waiting. But if you look, you'll see a penguin about 2/3 of the way up standing off the penguin highway. Right next to that penguin to the left is a penguin that looks dark. But if you look closer, you'll see that's not the back of the penguin. That is the front. And that's the way you know if a penguin has been in the water for a week or not. If the penguin is nice and clean, they've been in the water. If they're dirty and brown and filthy on their white feathers, then they have been on the nest for the week and they're headed down. All right, I'm going to keep my fingers crossed this video works because they take us out in zodiacs. And if you look at the background, you'll see the white snow, but then you'll see like little gray dots along the beach and white dots along the beach. And then you'll start to see them going up into the mountainside there. This is Brown Bluff. It's one of the more northernmost colonies on the peninsula. And this one has, if I remember correctly, like 40,000 penguin pairs. But those are all penguins, all those dots you see there. And so we could not land that day because if you look at the shore, it's covered with ice and it was not safe to land the zodiacs that day. But when you're riding around in the zodiac, sometimes other things happen.
So, sorry for bothering you, but I have a problem.
Just hold on a second. Walk for a second. I'm sure you have some.
No, my computer's being weird and
Oh no. Well, hopefully you will be able to see it. Uh-oh, now it's gone completely. Hopefully you'll be able to see it on the YouTube video.
I am trying to log off and log back on, but then my computer's not letting me leave.
I'm not sure.
So like,
That would be a Jenny question.
Yeah, so could someone please kick me off so I can come back on?
We'll be with you. We're on it. Very, very cool. Thank you for sharing the video. That was very exciting.
Isn't it? Is she back in? I didn't want to leave without her to the next video, the next picture.
I am not. No one has kicked me off yet.
Jenny, are you able to kick Sage off?
Michelle's on it.
Oh, okay. All right.
Jenny, I can't do it. It says she won't be able to get back in. Can you look and see if you can do it?
It's fine. Just take me off anyway.
I will just go to the chat box and we'll chat in the chat box.
Yep.
Okay. Do you want me to keep moving?
Sorry, Judith. Go ahead. Thank you.
You're fine. I don't know whether you wanted me to pause or keep moving.
Nope. Let's go. Let's keep moving. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. So basically what you had there was the penguins will pop up out of the water thinking they're on an iceberg and they're really in the zodiac. And the penguins were so active that day that we had 3 different zodiacs end up with penguins in them. And 2 zodiacs, the people sitting on the edges actually got bonked in the back of the head by penguins shooting out of the water. And one of the zodiacs actually found leopard seals that were hunting the penguins in the penguin highways in the water. And that's why the penguins were constantly trying to get out of the water to find someplace else safe to be. So we had to stay 15 feet away from any animals. And then there's a later one that we were told to stay 30 feet away from. And that is to respect their area. If they want to come over and check you out, fine. But the goal is to do no harm. So very typical colors of icebergs in the water. And that's why I pulled this one up. You can see the lines where it is partially melted. Sometimes you will see the lines on icebergs where the iceberg is broken off of a bigger iceberg. And so you can see the watermark line on many of them. very typical pictures of Antarctica. The colors are blues, whites, and then browns to blacks. And that's your color scheme in Antarctica. If you see another color, it's usually either man-made or it's an animal that is using it for some sort of distraction or warning sign, that type of thing. If you look in the bottom left hand of this picture, you'll see 3 humpback whales surfacing. Antarctica, while we were there, we were right over the winter solstice for us, which would have been the summer solstice for them. So in December, the ice was not completely melted off the ocean in places. And so you could find areas that are called fast ice, where the ice has grown from the continent during the wintertime, and then it melts back. And so it becomes pancake ice and other things as it starts to melt. We're standing right here. The ship has rammed into a piece of fast ice. So behind the photographer that took this picture for me is land. And then where I'm standing is 3 to 6 feet of ice over 198 feet of water. So that's why you have the life jackets on. You can see the cones in the background where they found the areas that the ship had sort of disrupted the ice a little bit and they didn't want people walking on. So, and we could get out and walk around. The even cooler part of this picture is everybody assumes it's during the daytime. This picture was taken at 10:45 p.m. So you're dealing with a time period of 24/7 light. It's not bright light all the time, but it's light. We purposely went farther in the Weddell Sea. I don't know if any of you all have ever heard of a gentleman named Will Steger, but he and a group of 5 others from 4 different countries around the world, 5 different countries around the world, sorry, traversed from the Antarctic Peninsula to the South Pole and then across the other side of Antarctica back in the late 80s. And he was the guest speaker on our expedition. And so the captain decided to try to get him as far south as they could towards where his original starting point was back in the 1980s. No one can replicate what he's done because the Larsen ice shelves have fallen into the ocean. So they're gone. Nobody can start where he started. But we were able to get much farther south in the Weddell Sea than expected because technically this area should be full of ice. A little bit farther south of here is where Shackleton's ship was crushed in the ice. So we shouldn't have been able to get here, but for some reason, the way the winds and the currents were, it wasn't pushing the ice here and the ice had melted more in this area. If you look underneath that peak that's pointed and come almost straight down, you'll see little yellow and orange dots on the shore. And those are the Zodiacs and the kayaks. They took us over in the Zodiacs and then we were able to kayak around these icebergs. We were also that same day able to do the polar plunge, and everybody always asks, did you jump in? Well, yes, I did. It was 31 degrees in the ocean, 33 degrees in the air. And I have this wonderful certificate now that says we do solemnly acknowledge this act of undoubted courage and extraordinary foolishness. The only thing I could think of as I hit that water, off the shore of New Jersey, it's probably not this cold in the water when you get to the summertime and you go to the ocean and so on. I know the water is a little bit warmer as you head down to South Carolina, North Carolina, but you hit 31 degrees of water and your body says, hello, we have a problem. We need to survive. And you'll notice the gentleman off to the right is standing on a platform that's hooked with another Zodiac that's off this picture. My only thought as I hit that water was I had to find Paulo's blue gloves. That was all I had to think about. It was find those blue gloves because your whole body is saying survive, survive, survive. So it's really an interesting piece. By the time I got back into the doorway, they were like, do you want to go again? And my body had warmed up, but I was like, nope, once is enough. There were people who did go in a second and third time. Lots of different whales to be seen. The best pictures that we got were, of course, of the humpbacks, because they're the ones who are a little bit more showy. They'll come up to the surface more in order to feed. You'll see them a lot more. So all 4 of these pictures are actually of humpback whales. In the picture on the right and the top picture on the left, you'll see penguins, because penguins and whales will eat the same thing, the krill. Orcas were in the area. This orca was actually just off the side of our ship. I was leaning over the side to get her picture. She kept turning to see us. And that was the fascinating thing about the whales, is they would come closer to try to see us. But if you look at her white areas, you'll see that they're not really white. They're more of a yellowish tint to them. And that is the diatoms that attach to her when she's in warmer water. Whales actually get sunburned just like humans. And so the diatoms are a sunscreen for them. When they get into colder water, they actually scrape against things and slough it off. And then the diatoms end up in the food chain and feed other animals in the area like krill and so on. The interesting thing is a lot of seabirds will smell the diatoms in areas, and it's often attached to plastic in the water. So seals. Seals are, I'm sorry if you like seals. Seals are, to me, kind of boring. They lay around, they eat, they make noise at each other, they burp, they pass gas, and then they sleep again and it all starts over again. I show you the cute pictures on the bottom and the left-hand side. Those are the weaners. They have just been weaned from their mother. So they're about a year old seals, and you can see kind of the fluff on them still. The upper right-hand picture is the elephant seals that are a little bit older. These were the seals that they told us to give a 30-foot space to. I gave them a 50 because some of the males were very, very large, and when they move faster than you think they do. We also saw sea lions at one point, and this is still in Argentina in the Bengal Channel. But you can see they're all just sort of laying around until I spotted this guy. And he was quite active and even walked across to everyone, waking up those who were asleep. So otherwise, everybody just sort of flops together and they're all laying around together. Blue whales. Blue whales are amazing. We saw one blue whale, could not get a picture of it. This is not a blue whale in the picture. This is a fin whale, which is the second largest whale in the world. These fin whales stayed with our ship, I would say probably a good half hour. In fact, at one point, the captain was panicked that we'd lost sight of them, and he was worried that they were under the ship. If a fin whale, if you hear of a whale getting hit by a ship, most of the time it's a fin whale. They don't understand spacing as well as some of the other whales, and so they don't get out of the way quick enough. But the fin whale is the second largest whale in the world. And these fin whales, this was a mother and a calf, and there were a couple further off in the distance, but they were purposely ramming themselves into the crest of the wave in order to push themselves out of the water to see us, is what the whale scientist that was with us was trying to explain to us. If you follow the mouth, you'll see the white baleen right under the water there and a little bit right above on the right-hand side of the whale. If you follow that line of black down into the water, you'll see a black dot in the water. That is the fin whale's eye. You didn't see the fin for about, if you were to just keep taking pictures, you would see the fin maybe about 3 pictures later. You would see the end maybe about 2-3 more pictures later. So we're talking a very big whale. To give you an idea, this is a scuba diver next to a fin whale, to give you the idea. Often people don't realize that under the water, there's more going on than people realize in Antarctica. These were all taken by the divers that were with us. Some of it is by them actually swimming down. Some of it is by the ROVs that they sent down. But all of these are species that you'd be like, oh, that's probably on the bottom of the floor of the ocean near us. But these were in Antarctica, and you can see there's a skate type ray in the bottom picture. You can see there's sort of like a anemone type thing in the upper right. And I'm sorry, I don't remember the names of all these. And then the little starfish that's down there, that starfish is about the size of a quarter. and they figured it was about 50 years old just because of the temperature. So where the fin whales, the penguins, can all move when the oceans warm up and the climate is changing, these species can't move as fast. And so that's what I want you to start kind of thinking about is as you're looking at oceans, consider what's underneath them that we can't see or haven't discovered yet. Dolphins are always fun. At the front of the bow of the ship, you'll see the ship in the bottom, in the left-hand picture, that is the bow of the ship. I'm leaning over it, as you can see in the mock-up picture on the right-hand side to show what I was doing. And the dolphins were jumping out. Our ship was cruising along at a decent speed. I don't remember how many knots. And the dolphins were just playing in the front, and they were rotating. There were about 5 or 6 of them, and they were just rotating around. These are Peale's dolphins. Birds. The upper right-hand corner is the skua. That's the one that eats penguins. To give you an idea of size, a little bit bigger than our turkey vultures that you all might see also that we have in our area down here in the Appalachian. On the left-hand side, that is an imperial shag. In the center, you have a storm petrel. And you can see their coloration helps as they fly. It helps camouflage them into the ocean water. On the bottom left is one of the albatrosses. And if I remember correctly, it's the sooty albatross. And then in the right-hand bottom is the snowy sheathbill. So all different birds that you would find. To give you size estimate, the snowy sheathbill would be about double the size of our robins. So, and then the albatross, the wingspan of that albatross is anywhere from 4 to 6 feet. Unfortunately, a lot of the birds, when they're flying, you can't see their size because you're comparing it to the waves on the water. There's no stationary object. Man has been in Antarctica for a while. This is the British outpost. It was a secret outpost. This is created by them in the 50s, if I remember correctly. And it was set up to establish territory in Antarctica. And so a lot of countries tried to establish territory. Now it's part of the United Kingdom's heritage sites. And so they welcome visitors, but the 5-6 people who live there during the Antarctic summer are also conducting research. They count penguins, they monitor the glaciers, they count eggs, they monitor whatever seals come through, that type of thing. So they're also collecting research at the time. Whaling, of course, was a major undertaking in the Antarctic waters. This is on Deception Island, which was a volcanic island and still is. You can tell by the landscape of it. But it was an old whaling station that was abandoned. There are still countries in the world that whale. Several of them have said they will not whale in Antarctic waters, but what do? Put up a fence and tell the whales they cannot migrate? So that's another issue and thing to think about as you continue thinking about the oceans. Plastics. My big thing when I went down to Antarctica was they asked, is there anything you really want to do? And I said, yes, I'd like to do a plastics dredging. And so we found that one of the scientists linked with Lindblad Expeditions had developed a protocol. And so we used her protocol and dredged through the water. We went a mile one direction, pulled those samples in, went a mile the other direction and pulled those samples in. We did not find any trace plastics. Now, granted, we could not see microplastics because the ship was not equipped for some of the really intense things we would have needed to look for, but we did not find any. However, if you look in the upper right-hand picture next to my boot, the first day I set foot on that island in Antarctica, think back to me and how excited I was about that penguin that I sat down and looked at. The first day I set foot, that's what I saw on the beach. That piece of the top of the bottle, and then you can see like a tape roller piece. We also further around found a piece of tubing. No, I did not leave any of them on the beach, took them all back to the ship to get properly disposed of. But just the fact that it was there means that the ocean currents are taking things where you don't necessarily expect to see them. In the bottom right-hand picture, that is the boot station to clean the boots because you don't want to take any contaminant or microorganism from one site to the next. So that is another way to try to protect each site to be its own viable entity. All my students wanted me to definitely touch a penguin. Well, you can't touch a penguin. Everybody asked me, did you touch a penguin? Did you touch a penguin? So yes, this is the picture of me touching a penguin in Ushuaia. So I challenge you with a couple of things. As you go through this week and learn more about the oceans, as you continue your learning experience in life, tell the story of your life. Tell about your travels to people who may not have been to those places. Let them learn from you, and you be a way to take what you've learned and pass it on to others so that they can use that information and make decisions in their life, knowing more. My other thing that I suggest you do is please be sure that you look at the world and start thinking about how you see things and what's there. My students canvassed our campus looking for pictures of things that were similar to things I might have found in Antarctica or maybe not, and they created I wonder statements. We found that on our campus, we have a plant called hairy bittercress, and it's in the same family as the Antarctic pearlwort. So start looking at your environment and realizing that there are connections, even though you look outside and you see lots of green, and in Antarctica, you look out and see lots of white, there are connections to places that you can start making. So I leave you with this guy. This guy looks all so cute. This was taken about a month after I was in Antarctica. It was taken by my mentor on the Lindblad expeditions. And it is a penguin on one of the islands that we had visited. The penguin is in snow, sitting on its nest. My question to my mentor was, what happens to the nest and what happens to all the chicks and eggs in that colony? And he said they won't have any chicks or eggs that year. The colony will not reproduce that year. Anything they've laid will die because they can't survive in that much snow. So I want you to be aware that climate change doesn't mean that everything's melting. It means that some places are getting too much snow, and these are colonies that have been there for hundreds of years. So start kind of considering what we're looking at in our future. So that brings me to questions. So I will stop sharing.
Cool. I'll turn my video back on for a second. Thank you so much. It's a good thing I had my mute on because I was going, oh, wow, that's amazing. Look at how cute. And just talking throughout the entire time because I was fascinated by all those cool animals in the story you just told us. And I know I have a couple of questions, but I'm sure everybody else does as well on our call. So I'm going to open it up to everybody else. Anybody, I guess you can do the little raise your hand icon. And let us know if you guys in this meeting have a question that you'd like to ask. And while they're waiting, I can ask one.
Okay.
If anybody else
I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
About how long was the whole trip?
15 days. We were only on the Antarctic continent for 6 of those days. The rest was all travel time.
I also have a question.
Go ahead.
Did you see any Weddell seals?
Yes. My pictures of Weddell seals were okay. So I have so many more pictures that it would take hours and maybe even days and maybe weeks to sit here with me. But the Weddell seals that I did see, I tried to get a video of because they were actually singing. And it was at Palmer Station. We were on an island just off of the area, and the Weddell seals were a good distance away. We could hear them, but when we tried to video it, nobody had equipment. But if you've never heard the Weddell seal song, you need to pull it up and listen. Imagine old-fashioned computer sound. That's the closest you can get to explaining it.
Huh, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Now we do have one question from earlier on in our YouTube chat section. And this person asks, what penguins are native to Antarctica? I remember you said 3.
So it would be the Gentoo, it would be the Emperor, and it would be the Adelie. And then penguins, even most people don't realize it, but we do have penguins in North America, not North America, in the Northern Hemisphere. Because the Galapagos Islands have a penguin and it does cross over, but it's considered to be in the equatorial region. So depends on how you want to argue it.
Sure, like the secret third hemisphere, I guess,
Right.
if you will.
Right.
Anybody else have a question?
I have a question. Thank you, Judith. That was incredible. I was also making lots of noises and excitement with all the pictures. I'm just curious, like, what surprised you the most just about this experience, or what was like just the kind of something that just you didn't expect to come away with? Or
To tell you the truth, I went down looking for plastics, keeping my fingers crossed that I wouldn't find any. And I think that was the most shocking piece, was just setting foot on the shore and there it was. Now there were a couple of bases around, it could have floated from those, it could have come from ocean currents. Beyond that, the other shocking was just the serene, quiet peacefulness of it. Just being able to really be in a place that very few people have been to, and realizing you are now one of the people tasked with making sure other people learn about it.
Mhm.
So I think that's kind of what fell heavy on my heart, of just, what should I do at home now? What do I need to do differently? How do I need to get this to other people to know more?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now we have another question coming in from one of the social media platforms somewhere, who's asking, when you prepared for this trip, what all kinds of gear did you have to get ready to go to Antarctica?
Well, with Lindblad, they're very good with what they do. And plus I had fellows who had gone before me who I reached out to and said, okay, what do I need to do? And I was one of the lucky people because I found out in March and met with everybody in April and didn't go until December. There were other fellows who went to the northern areas in May and they had a much shorter window to prepare. So additionally, I got to use the winter time for us that became sale season in summer to start gathering things. So definitely I used alpaca and wool socks, but I put sock liners in them too. We had waterproof boots that you could get from Lindblad and would already be there on the ship waiting for you. Big rubber boots you would use on a farm is the best way to think on those, but really insulated thick on the bottom. Water pants. So like if you've ever had a raincoat and water pants, you had the water pants, but underneath you needed something to keep you warm, but you didn't want to be overly heated because then you would overheat and be trying to take everything off because you'd be sweating inside. So I went with a like thermoskin layer from, I think it was Lion's Den, and then I had like another layer of merino. So it just depended. If I knew I was going to be sitting on the Zodiac for a while, I layered 3 pairs of pants underneath the water pants. If I knew I was going to be hiking, I layered 2 in the water pants so that I didn't overheat. Top, same way. I did the shells that go underneath the wool lining because it doesn't bother me. Some of the ones I found to have those on, some people get bothered by them. And then just layer from there. Lindblad actually gives you the parka. So you have the thick single jacket and then you have the parka part. And to give you an idea, after I returned last January, we hit a massively cold spell. We had the wood stove going, everything here, but it was down in the single digits and below for almost 2 weeks, which is unheard of in our area. And I thought, well, I'll go help all my elderly neighbors and put their newspapers in. So I put on the inside layer and then the parka. And when I got back, I was dripping wet. So definitely you go with those. If you've ever had gloves that you have the glove liner and then the glove, that works well. Waterproof gloves when you're on the Zodiac or touching anything that is going to melt in your hands. So that's just layers.
It kind of sounds like you're just one step away from an astronaut suit at that point.
Yes, yeah, it does. Because they warn you, you have, about an hour or two, they'll go, okay, so the first wave is going to go on shore at this time. And so, okay, I have this much that I have to put on, this many layers, this is here. So you have to think through how long it's going to take you to get dressed in order to get ready for going out on the expedition. So,
Oh my goodness.
yeah.
Wow. Anybody else have any other questions before I ask mine?
I have another one.
Go ahead.
How many people were on your expedition, on the boat?
It's not a boat. The
Yep,
captain
pardon
will
me.
come after you on that one. I did learn the difference between a ship and a boat. A boat would be like your rowboat dinghies and stuff like that. But on the ship, I don't think we were over 200, and that included the crew. The Lindblad tries to keep it small expeditions. We were talking with the captain at one point because we were coming up on Cape Horn. And because we started in Argentina, they had to get special permission to go even near Cape Horn because it's part of Chile. And so we were coming up on Cape Horn and glimpsing it from farther away. And one of those huge cruise, ocean liners was going by, like you'd see in the Caribbean type thing. And the captain was just appalled because his comment was, they're taking big, huge ships into waters that they don't have the protection gear or the ability to rescue people from. And so that's why we had to do several lifeboat drills. I mean, we knew exactly where you had to go, what you had to do, and the stations, because if we had to abandon ship, there's no definite that there's another ship within a day from you, because of the way that they do it in Antarctica. They try not to let ships see each other in order to keep the environment pristine. So.
Great question, Jim. And that goes along into mine is, what people were with you and what kind of expertise was with you besides the whale biologist?
Yeah, the whale biologist was my mentor. Learned so much from him. And I actually got to meet him back in April before we even went. So that was really neat. But on Lindblad's ships, they always have a grouping of naturalists. They have National Geographic photographers on there. The naturalists that were on our ship ranged anywhere from a husband and wife that studied crocodiles in Australia, to our whale expert, to some new naturalists that were starting out in Antarctica, to ones that were seasoned and had been there many seasons. Each of them did talks on the ship. So we had talks from them. We had talks from the photographer. The photographer would give you hints of how to photograph better from where you were standing type thing. Because my fellow teacher and I were, we were part of the crew. So we were to help when needed, but we were also sort of guests. So we were to use time to go see things. And so they actually had us do a presentation about what we were thinking we would do when we came back from Antarctica and bring our information back. Beyond that, you have all your typical services that you would normally, you're not going to have the entertainment and the dancing like you get on some cruise ships, because the entertainment's out the windows. You're there to observe and watch and learn. But the passengers ranged from young students that we actually ended up working some with, all the way to older people who were on their retirement cruise. So.
Oh my goodness, what an amazing mix of people, and such a fantastic experience. You must have had a blast. And maybe I'm putting words in everybody else's mouth, but I'm so excited that you shared this with us, and I kind of want to go to Antarctica myself now and just continue sharing and passing it forward.
Just do it right. Do it right. Go with a company that does the IOTA regulations.
Very true. Good point. Thank you for that.
Yep.
Well, with that, we are coming close to an hour now. So if we don't have any more questions, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the live feed. Anybody? Last chance? Okay. So thank you so much again for sharing with us here in the meeting, as well as to our YouTube fans on the Center for Aquatic Sciences YouTube channel. This was just our first talk with our expert here, Miss Judith Painter. Thank you for talking to us about Antarctica. And everybody who's watching or going to tune in afterwards and watch this video, We have a couple more live things coming tonight with a bedtime story and a concert, our first concert of the week. So tune into that on Facebook, Instagram. We're also on Twitter, resharing things, a little bit on LinkedIn, and oh yeah, YouTube, the one that we're on right now. So with that, I'm going to sign off. Again, my name is Jenny, and I hope to see you around the internet somewhere later on this week. All right, here we go.